Hey man, we are officially on the road to WrestleMania 40. And in honor of reaching that historic feat, I've spent the last couple months watching every single WrestleMania from beginning to end. Did I have a good time doing it? Yeah, for sure. Would I recommend it to anyone else? Probably not. Listen, there was a lot of good on these shows, but man, it's a lot of wrestling. And these shows go from being 3 hours to being 8 fucking hours! So yeah, probably wouldn't recommend. Especially watching like the first 16 of them. It's a whole lot of fluff to get through the good stuff. But if y'all want the good stuff, here y'all go. Here's my opinion of the best match of every WrestleMania. And listen, these are just my opinions at the end of the day, so if you end up disagreeing, it is what it is, bro. Now enough yapping, let's get on with the list, man. Listen, I understand that this Mania is iconic and all, and it really uplifted the WWF and propelled them into new heights and shit. But I'm sorry, this show was buns. A whole bunch of squash matches. Literally the first match in WrestleMania history was a squash match. I won't slander this too much because it was the first of its kind, so they didn't really know what they were doing. And the main event between Hogan and Mr. T against Piper and Orndorff was pretty watchable, so we're good there. It pretty much encapsulates the good things about this Mania, so I can't hate on that. I know I gave the last year a bit of a pass, but nah, you gotta know better at this point, bruh. Who told Vince doing one show from 3 different cities was a good idea? Why we need NFL players in a damn battle royal? Hell, Andre won this shit by throwing out Bret Hart. Not even an NFL guy. And for God's sake, can we please get Susan St. James off commentary? I have heard enough uh-ohs for a lifetime. But we got this slept-on tag match between the Dream Team, aka Brutus Beefcake, and Greg the Hammer Valentine versus the British Bulldogs. Nothing special here, but it was a decent match on a card of mostly shitty matches, so there's that. I understand that Hogan versus Andre is probably the most iconic match in the history of WrestleMania, but let's be honest, without the slam, would it really be memorable? I don't think so. My pick for best match on this card was, in my opinion, the first actual great match in WrestleMania history. Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat for the Intercontinental Championship. This is just pure work rate at its finest. This match could have taken place beat by beat in any era and it would still go down as a classic. One of the few matches from the Golden Age that really holds up well. If you haven't seen it and you got some time, check it out. It's actually timeless. Bro, this gotta be in the conversation for one of the most boring WrestleManias of all time. The majority of this show was full of matches of a 14-man tournament. Yes, a 14-man tournament. I don't know whose idea that was, but how does that logistically work? And most of these matches were completely uneventful. But I guess I'll give it to the main event of Randy Savage versus Ted DiBiase. Wasn't really much to the match, it was like 8 minutes, but I'm giving it extra points for Macho Man winning his first world title. But then I'm going to take away some of those extra points because Hogan just had to hog the spotlight once again. This show was aight. Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude was cool, but the rest of the show was mad forgettable. But let me just say, the main event of the Mega Powers exploding is heavily slept on. This low-key might be my favorite Hogan match outside of one I'll get to later. Everyone talks about the build to this show as they should. It's one of the best stories WWE has ever told. But the match between Hogan and Savage does not get talked about enough. Now, it truly depends on your tolerance for the Hulk up spot at the end, but hey, different era. I guess it worked back then. But the rest of the match, great stuff. This is legit a one-match show. I cannot tell you what really happened in any of these matches, and I deadass just watched it. Not a single match went past 12 minutes, except for the main event between Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior, which is easily the best match on the card. I gotta keep it a stack though. This is a crowd match more than anything. I promise you, if you muted this match, you're gonna fall asleep, but it's still a fun watch, and it's for sure iconic for all the right reasons, but I just have one question. What the fuck are y'all doing? There's kids watching. Another one-match show, and not because nothing else on the show was memorable, but because everything else on this show was ass. Yeah, sure, the streak starts here, but that match was mid as fuck. Hogan and Slaughter had one of the dumbest storylines going into a WrestleMania main event, and the match itself added more to that shit salad. But we got one of the most emotional matches and segments in Mania history with Savage vs. Warrior in the retirement match. Most of us know Warrior wasn't the best worker, but Savage carried him to a great match, and of course, the moment with Miss Elizabeth, Sensational Sherry, and Savage at the end is always brought up for a reason. One of the most beautiful moments in the history of WrestleMania. Kinda sad in hindsight, but it still holds up. I'm not gonna hold you, this show was actually decent up until the main event. Freaking Hogan, bro. But there were two good choices for the best match on the show. Before I even started recording, I went back and watched Flair vs. Savage and Piper vs. Bret again to make my final call on which one was the best, and I have to give it to the IC title match. I just feel like the story that they told during the match was better. But both of them were babyface going into the match, but Roddy played up to his heel side up until the end, but then that cost him the title in the technical classic. Bro, the first thing I think when I think of this show is, oh nah. We had probably the worst match of Undertaker's streak with Giant Gonzalez, aka the Kwame Brown of pro wrestling. And then we had one of the most egregious endings in WrestleMania history when Hulk cashed in his Hogan in the Bank contract to squash Yokozuna, who had just beaten Bret Hart for the world title. Like, go home, bro. How is this a babyface? Y'all didn't turn on this man back then? Even the best match on this show was mid, with the Steiner Brothers versus the Head Shrinkers for the tag title, and I'm not gonna lie, bro. If you love yourself, don't watch this show. Now this right here is the first really good WrestleMania. After 9 years, they finally understood the formula. Not too many matches and space out the good shit. And the good stuff was really good. For example, we got the first televised ladder match in WWE history between Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, and while I like that match a lot, it doesn't hold up as much simply because we've been spoiled with better ladder matches, but what has held up was the opening match between Owen Hart and Bret Hart. Arguably still the best opening match in WrestleMania history. They for real just went in there and put on a technical classic with amazing storytelling. Despite Owen turning on Bret earlier in the year, Bret was still trying to keep it clean, but Owen just kept egging him on, and I love the ending with Owen getting the victory roll on Bret. Made him look great, and legit, you know what? No complaints here at all. Back to the bullshit we go. Another one that should be in the conversation for the most boring WrestleMania of all time. I know celebrities were all over these older WrestleManias, but there were way too damn many everywhere on the show, to the point that the main event of WrestleMania 11 was Lawrence Taylor. Yes, that Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow. Listen, I get it. LT is the greatest linebacker of all time in the NFL. But what the fuck, bro? What are we doing here? This is another example of 1995 being the worst year in WWE history. Even the best match on this card, which was Diesel versus Shawn Michaels for the WWF title, was built around the loyalty of Pamela fucking Anderson. And she looked like she couldn't wait to get backstage and collect her paycheck. This actually might be the worst WrestleMania of all time, bro. I'm not gonna hold you. Man, I so badly wanted to say Undertaker versus Diesel as the answer because I genuinely enjoy watching that match more than the Iron Man match. But it ain't about what I like. The question is the best match on the card. So there you go. But I'm standing on this. Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12 is the most overrated match in the history of WrestleMania. It's a good match, heavily carried by the last 10 minutes of regulation and its sudden death overtime. And the finish of Shawn Michaels' boyhood dream coming true was iconic, so I'll give it to him. But go watch Taker and Diesel. The most underrated match of the streak, no doubt. Another one-match show, but that one match was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart. Submission match. Deadass belongs in the conversation of the best WrestleMania match of all time. Amazing brawl, and this is the greatest double turn of all time. I already know what camera shot pops in your head first. Ken Shamrock in them tight-ass booty shorts. What was you wearing, big dog? Nah, but for real, just look at this shot, man. Come on now. What are we even talking about? I think this WrestleMania is iconic for all the right reasons. Not really any standout matches like that, but it really set the groundwork for what the Attitude Era would become, and that was seen most when it came to the main event, aka the best match on the card. between Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels, which was slowed down a bit because of Shawn's back injury from the Rumble earlier this year. But despite that, it's still a pretty solid match that kicked off Austin's era on top. Also, side note, why don't nobody talk about Mike Tyson's fast count? How that didn't become controversy on television, I'll never understand. Let's be real, this WrestleMania was a mess, and the choice on this one ain't difficult in the slightest. Austin vs. Rock in the first of their WrestleMania trilogy. This match is the definition of overbooked Attitude Era nonsense. Hell, it had 4 different referees. But come on, this is Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock. It was damn near impossible to be a miss. It's probably the weakest of the trilogy, but it's still heat. Man, if we're keeping it real, the Attitude Era did not have the best WrestleManias. The only singles match on this card was the Cat versus Terry Runnels and a cat fight. But remember guys, the Attitude Era was just perfect, y'all. But the show wasn't all bad. We got the first ever triangle ladder match between the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian. Such an innovative match that helped create the TLC match that would debut later on this year between the same 3 teams and then got topped the very next year. Now, this Mania was the exception. The greatest WrestleMania of all time, in my opinion, capped off with arguably the best main event in WrestleMania history. Stone Cold versus The Rock 2. No matter how you feel about the heel turn in the end, these two went out there and gave us a match that perfectly illustrated the best things of the Attitude Era. And in some people's opinion, this was the end of the Attitude Era, and honestly, what better way to go out? Plus, we got the best Rock stunner sell, so it gets extra points. The story that they took you through in this match of Austin slowly unraveling and getting more and more desperate to the point that he joined the man he spent the entire Attitude Era beefing with. What a match, man. But shout out to TLC 2 as well. This isn't even a question. Hulk Hogan versus The Rock in the greatest crowd match in WrestleMania history. Maybe even in WWE history. These fans were so nuclear for Hogan that they had to switch the heel and face dynamics for this match. They were so loud that it hurt the rest of the card because the fans were so tired. The visual of the stare down, come on now, this is just iconic. We're always talking about auras nowadays, and this was 2 of the biggest stars in WWE history going at it in a match that will never be replicated. Here we go again! Right now! Let's go! This right here is personally my favorite WrestleMania. It's the first of my lifetime, and it's in my hometown, and it's a great show from top to bottom, which gives me a lot of options, but I'm gonna go with Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho on this one. And I'm gonna just tell y'all right now, y'all gonna hear Shawn Michaels' name a lot for the next few entries, so just start getting used to it, gang. The run that this man went on from this match all the way to his very last WrestleMania match is a good reason why he got the nickname of Mr. WrestleMania. I mean, I expect nothing less than greatness from Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho anyway, and this match is exactly what that was and more. Well, this show gets ignored quite a lot, and I mean, obviously for good reason. I'm not gonna lie, there's only 2 good options here, Eddie Guerrero versus Kurt Angle, or my ultimate choice, the triple threat main event between Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chris Benoit. Legit, this match may just be the greatest triple threat match in WWE history. From the match itself to its cathartic finish to the aftermath with Eddie and Chris in the ring, watching it again brought me to tears, I'm not even gonna lie. I understand if you struggle to put real life aside to watch this, but if you're able to do so, go for it because this is a great match without a doubt. This was the WrestleMania that established 4 of my childhood heroes as the new top faces of WWE at the time. But none of those matches can go over who, in my opinion, are the 2 greatest in-ring performers in WWE history, putting on a legendary match, Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle. This is an example of a dream match exceeding the hype. My words will not do this match justice. Please go watch this for yourself. Even if you've seen it before, you owe yourself. Go treat yourself. This is a wrestling classic. Go enjoy yourself, man. Probably the most underrated WrestleMania of all time. So many great moments and matches from this show that just don't get talked about enough. But the hardcore match between Mick Foley and Edge was unworldly. Mick Foley finally got that WrestleMania moment he always wanted, and this solidified Edge as the top main event heel of this era. The spear through the flaming table is a clip that will be replayed in WrestleMania highlight reels forever. Another very slept on WrestleMania. My choice for this show was John Cena versus Shawn Michaels in the main event. This was a part of the huge run of great matches that Cena was having in 2007, but honestly, If you pick Undertaker versus Batista from earlier in the show, I wouldn't blame you at all. Shawn Michaels was in his usual WrestleMania bag, and John Cena was out here showing that he could hang with the best of them, making another DX member tap out in the main event of WrestleMania. This was the first WrestleMania that I ever watched live as it was happening, and this WrestleMania just so happened to be the last one of the Ruthless Aggression era, and what a way to close it out. This belongs in more people's top 5 WrestleMania discussions. But I gotta give it to the emotional roller coaster that was Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels. The crowd was just so behind Ric Flair here, and he was doing his thing for real, but of course, I'm sorry, I love you. What an end to one of, if not the greatest pro wrestling career of all time. Oh, for fuck's sake. Do I have to say anything? Come on now, let's keep it a buck. What we gonna talk about? The damn Battle Royal? The answer is Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. Nothing else will be accepted. To quote Jim Ross after the match was over, as a wrestling fan, how could you ask for anything more? Well, they gave us more anyway. But again, is this even a question? Granted, this show had better matches than 25 like Cena and Batista, but yeah, this isn't even close. Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels again. And this time, in its rightful place in the main event. I don't think this is a better match from the year before, but this definitely had a better story going into it. And of course, what a great way for Shawn Michaels to end his career. And luckily, he never wrestled again. I hate this show with my entire soul. The one time my parents let me buy a pay-per-view, and I was given Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler for 30 fucking minutes. I still want a refund. Anyways, at least we got one WrestleMania Classic in Triple H versus The Undertaker in a no-holds-barred match. This one was different from the rest of the streak matches. They told a story of Triple H pretty much beating down Taker to the point that Taker didn't even have like a definite dominant win. It was more like he kind of survived when he caught Triple H with the Hell's Gate. They even carted him out on a stretcher after the match while Triple H walked out on his own, which actually advanced the story into the next year. I mainly love this WrestleMania because of Rock vs. Cena. That was one of the key rivalries of my childhood, but I would deserve to have my channel deleted if I didn't say that the best match on this show was Team Teddy versus Team Johnny. Absolute classic tag match, man. Oh yeah, and there was also Triple H versus The Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell with Shawn Michaels as special guest referee. The whole story low-key started from WrestleMania 25 all the way to now, and the presentation for this was perfect. The Cell got its own entrance, the storytelling was great, and of course, the greatest kickout probably in wrestling history. You would be lying if you told me you didn't believe the streak was over here. And if this visual was truly the end of all 3 men's in-ring careers, what a way it would have been for them to go out. But nope! I'm coming home. This definitely is one of the wackest WrestleManias in recent memory. We only had one great match on this show, so it's gotta be Undertaker versus CM Punk, and the last win for the streak, and honestly, Taker's last great WrestleMania match. The story for this was absolutely wild. Bro, Paul Bearer actually died. Like, in real life, but they made the story all about that. I'm not gonna lie, that was low-key the edgiest thing we'd seen in WWE in some time. But I will say this, man, and I hate to sound like your typical old head, but if you weren't around for this special run of Undertaker matches at WrestleMania, please do yourself a favor and go watch these matches back. You will not regret it. We're gonna celebrate, yeah, yeah, yeah! Ah, yes. The most overrated WrestleMania of all time. Yeah, I said it. A show heavily carried by its main event ending and its opening match, but hey man, those matches were special. Of course, the ending with Daniel Bryan holding up the 2 world titles to close WrestleMania is what everyone talks about, but my choice for the better match of the two was the opening match between Bryan and Triple H. To me, the second best opening match in WrestleMania history, with 2 guys who had surprisingly great chemistry, and man, was this crowd molten hot for Daniel Bryan in this match. And to me, the last great Triple H singles match at WrestleMania as well. I deadass have never seen a WrestleMania that was built so awfully but ended up being so great. There's actually not a bad match on this card if you ask me. Maybe bad decisions, cough, Triple H beating Sting, cough. Not a single bad match. But the wildest part is that the match that everyone was looking forward to the least ended up being the best match on this WrestleMania. And personally, y'all not gonna believe this, but this is my favorite match of all time. Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, the main event. Fans were so ready to hate this match, but couldn't help but love it in the end. And of course, is enhanced by the heist of the century. I could talk about this match for hours. That's how much I love this match. A WrestleMania that was hurt by a multitude of injuries in the build up to the show, but around this time, WWE finally started to take their women's division serious and thankfully got rid of that god-awful Divas title and had Lita bring out the new WWE Women's Championship. And Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks went out there and tore the house down and put on what was by far the best women's match at WrestleMania up to this point. Would have been cool for Sasha to win after that amazing entrance, but hey, you can't have it all, right?
Give me the green light, cause I'm ready to go.
As much as I love the 5-minute car crash that was Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg, I have to go with AJ Styles versus Shane McMahon. Dog, this man Shane pulled out a shooting star press. You heard me right, not AJ Styles. Shane McMahon attempted a shooting star press and it looked good. And of course, AJ Styles did AJ Styles things, but was it even believable that Shane McMahon can keep up with AJ Styles, especially for 20 whole minutes? Nah, but at least he didn't win. But also, let's be real. Is it believable that some undead zombie wants to compete for wrestling championships? I didn't think so.
We're gonna celebrate, yeah, yeah, yeah!
Man, imagine telling somebody after Wrestle Kingdom 10 that on a card that featured AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura, a match between Triple H and Stephanie McMahon against a 49-year-old Kurt Angle and a debuting Ronda Rousey would be the best match on the show. This is arguably the best in-ring debut for anyone in WWE history. This is back when fans actually liked Ronda Rousey, and the performance she put on was fantastic. Her exchanges with Stephanie and especially Triple H were incredibly impressive for somebody who had never done this before. If only this WrestleMania carried this momentum to the end.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Hey, if you lived on the East Coast, this was technically the first ever 2-night WrestleMania. Bro, 8 hours? 8 hours, gang? Thank God they actually started doing 2 nights because this was tough to get through in full. But at least this show gave us what we wanted. The first ever women's main event in WrestleMania history. A full-time Universal Champion in Seth Rollins, but easily the best match on the show as well as the best moment was Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship, with Kofi Kingston winning his first ever world title on the grandest stage of them all. I mean, what a moment, especially for someone like me. As a West African kid watching this, I legit felt like I could accomplish anything I ever wanted in this life, and I gotta thank this match for that. The crazy thing is, this wasn't audible. This wasn't even supposed to happen at all, but man, am I glad that it did. This WrestleMania was weird, and honestly, it's kind of depressing to the point I've promised myself to never watch this show again. And while I give the wrestlers their flowers for trying to give us a show to distract us from the unfortunate circumstances of the world at the time, this one was hard to get through. But for some of these matches, WWE got in their creative bag and put on 2 cinematic matches that were absolute, well, cinema. The Boneyard match was the perfect swan song for The Undertaker's career, but the Firefly Funhouse match between John Cena and Bray Wyatt has to be one of the wildest, interesting, head-spinning ways to tell a story in WWE history that I've ever seen, but I freaking loved it. I don't even think I can really properly explain this match for y'all. If y'all haven't seen this, this is a masterpiece. Please go watch it. After the year before's unexpected disaster, to finally see people in the crowd instead of a bunch of screens for 2 nights, that just added so much more to the show. The shows themselves were alright, I guess, but the main events of both nights were incredible. We got the history-making Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks on night 1. And if this is your pick for this WrestleMania, I understand. But I've got to give it to the main event of night 2. Roman Reigns versus Edge versus Daniel Bryan. 3 guys who at one point could have possibly never wrestled again going at it for the Universal Championship. And what a fun triple threat match. But of course, smash them, stack them, pin them. What a visual. The first WrestleMania after the pandemic era, and it low-key feels like they went all out for this show. Night one especially. And I know a lot of people would probably pick Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins in Cody's WWE return match. And the match itself was fantastic, but it's just something about Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair that made me pick this match. The callback to the squash at SummerSlam the year before was a great way to start the match. And these ladies went out there and tore the house down, man. And this match right here officially established Bianca Belair as the top dog of this women's division. I don't know if this is recency bias, but both nights of this WrestleMania had multiple matches that could have easily been on this list. Night one gave us Charlotte versus Rhea in possibly the greatest women's title match in WrestleMania history. The tag team title match between the Usos versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, arguably the best tag team match in WrestleMania history, period. And the amazing night two main event between Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. And also Snoop Dogg versus The Miz. What a people's elbow. But come on now. The answer here is Gunther versus Sheamus versus Drew McIntyre for the IC title. 17 minutes of carnage. 17 minutes of three men beating the absolute hell out of each other for the IC title. I could watch this match on a loop and I doubt I would get bored. That match was an absolute instant classic, bro. And that's it. The best match of every WrestleMania to date, y'all. Man, going through this and doing this list for y'all helps me remember, at the end of the day, man, I love wrestling. No matter how bad or how much of a headache it gives us sometimes, we all love this shit at the end of the day. And again, these are just my opinions. And listen, if you think I didn't give Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler enough credit, that's okay. It's your opinion. You should probably seek professional help, but it's your opinion. And with the card we have lined up for WrestleMania 40, I'm sure we're going to get more classics that we're going to look back on in history like we just did with these other ones. And listen, if y'all want to see the opposite of this list and you want me to rank the worst match of every WrestleMania, let me know by hitting that like button on this video. Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll suffer just for y'all. But that's going to be the end of this video. I appreciate every single one of y'all that made it to the end, bro. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Much love to y'all. Content coming soon. All right, I'll see y'all in the next one. I'm out of here. I'm gone.